Judy from California. So Judy has an unusual story about how she became an atheist. She wants to also ask us about a seemingly supernatural experience. Judy, can you hear us?
Guys, for having me on. Armin, if they do not invite you back, I will write an actual letter. I will put pen to paper, and I'm old. I can write cursive, and I'll put it in an actual envelope and put on a stamp and send it in saying, you get Armin on. Ha.
Oh, my God.
Thank you, Judy.
Hi, Dave. I have... I became an atheist in a way that I've never heard anybody say before, and it's kind of funny to me now that I'm old and I look back. You know, you look back on a life and you see things from I think a higher perspective. Anyway, when I was 5, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, just such a horrible, gray, restricting, cultish religion. And they gave me, when I was 5, they made the mistake of telling me about the flood. And I, you know, of course we believed in God, but my family believed in the Old Testament God. Fear me, worship me, obey me. And I always loved animals. And unfortunately, I had a good imagination. And I imagined the rain coming down, you know, because it took 40 days and 40 nights it rained. And if something, it would have had to have rained very, very hard to cover the whole earth. So we've got this pounding rain happening day and night. So people wouldn't have just dropped dead. Animals wouldn't have just dropped dead. They would have gradually run out of food. They would have all tried to get to higher ground. Houses would have been collapsing, sliding down. It would be in mud. They'd get to higher ground, and some people would be washed away, their husband, wives, everybody struggling. Animals doing the same thing, trying to climb trees, slowly dying horribly. And I thought, what a fucker. Oh, I'm sorry. What a poopy head that God is. I hate him. And I will wait till because the witnesses believe that you stand before God and get judged, right? You don't go live in heaven unless you're one of this special group, but you live on the earth. But God judges you. And I thought, I hate that guy. I hate him. And I will not live in a world ruled by him or it. Because I did picture him as a big, evil-looking man. I will not live in a world with him, but I will pretend until I get there. And I'm not going to tell anybody how I feel, because maybe I can fool God. Maybe if I say my prayers in front of my mother, maybe if I act good, he'll let me stand in front of him. And as my last act, I will spit in his friggin' eye and say, I hate you for what you did. And then when I actually got older, and I have no education that's formal, but I've read a lot, when I realized that there was no place for God, like Laplace said supposedly to Napoleon, I see no need for this, and as you study more, you realize there is no need for a God, and no explanation for God, no place for a God. I thought, I was so disappointed because I had this picture of being able, I knew I'd get smited, or whatever you say, but I had this picture. I'd go out having spit on him, and he'd be shocked because, who else is going to plan for that their whole lives? So I just wanted to tell that story because I never heard of anyone who became an atheist and was disappointed because they wouldn't get to have that final showdown with God. Anyway, I have an experience that happened to me that I have no explanation for, and I thought maybe you guys could listen to it and help me out with it, and I'll tell you quick. In the 1980s, I was newly married, and we took a class, a several-day class in meditation. And I read about the class, and it was meant to help you in all the ways that meditation helps. It helps you stay well, it reduces stress, helps you sleep, helps you stay healthy and get over headaches and tension and things like that. A lot helps you maybe be more creative, helps you in many ways. And I thought that's a very good thing. So we went to this class, and it did all of those things. It taught us how to meditate, how to go, and gave you some triggers so that you could go to a relaxed state relatively quickly. So it was very, very productive. However, something came up that I didn't know was going to be there. On the very last day, they told each of us, bring in 3 names, 3 cases of somebody you know who has a physical ailment. And you will get in pairs, and we did this, and you give, and now the guy that was working with me would give 3 names of somebody, and you tell their name and age and generally where they are in the world. So he'd said, for example, there's a woman, she's 45, and she lives in, Burlingame, somewhere. And then they taught us, you go to your, what they call go to level, meaning you relax. You get a picture of this person, and you can see stuff. And I could see that this, I just didn't know what it meant. I could see that this woman had something in her arms. And they don't show you a picture. They don't show you any medical, anything. They don't tell you anything more than it's a woman, she's 45. And I could see something was in her arms. The bones looked weird. And then after you do that, and they told us that you get to have, little by little, you understand what you're seeing. But I could just see something was wrong with her arms. Turned out she had arthritis in her arms. He said there's a guy, he's 28, and he's sick, and we don't know what it is. He just doesn't feel good. Well, this was in 1980, and that was the very beginning of the AIDS crisis, but if you didn't pay attention to it, and no one knew at that time, it was like the very beginning, 2019, of COVID. They're just getting people with the flu. They had young men, generally, that were getting sick of mysterious shit. And I didn't pay attention to it. But I looked at this guy, and I couldn't see, and I all of a sudden could see his blood, and I said, he's got AIDS. And I didn't know that word even. I guess I might have heard it in the background on the news, but I didn't know what the symptoms were, and I didn't know what symptoms this guy had. The guy who was giving me the name of the 28-year-old said, no, it's not AIDS. It's not that. We don't know what he has. But we took the class again, and I saw that guy, and the 28-year-old had died of AIDS. Now, since that time, I've had many experiences like that where someone's, having troubles with something. I can go to level, and I can see that. What's amazing to me is that everybody else in the class could do it. My husband could do it. My sister could do it. My sister's boyfriend, who at that time was a very rich, older guy who was very conservative and did not believe in anything supernatural, said he could do it. He said, I don't care to do it because I don't care what's wrong with people. But he could do it. And so I don't know what that is.
So wait, so you're saying you can detect people's illnesses? You have that power now?
Or death? Not necessarily the illness. I can see stuff, and it's not just me, but I can see stuff in a body, stuff in that area. Like the bones in that lady's arm looked to me like they were deteriorating, like they were lacy or something, like there were holes in them. And that's not arthritis.
What do you think? Judy, what do you think it is? I think
What I thought was that, in fact, there are ways that we can pick things up from people because the person who sits across from you is right next to you, and they give you this information so they know that person. And I thought, well, maybe there is some way that we can pick up thoughts, because thoughts are electrochemical energy, and electricity is heat. Maybe that heat, and we do radiate heat from our bodies, around our skin. Maybe you can pick it up from there. I don't know.
Judy, the problem is that what you've experienced, like everything that you've experienced, has not been observed in a controlled environment with like A/B testing, like having a controlled. It's not repeatable. So here's the thing: our brain is very good at seeing things that are not there, coming up with patterns that don't exist, seeing correlations where there's no correlations. highlighting things that seem significant, but other things that would also show that we don't have this ability, or something is not significant, but also reduce the emphasis on it in our mind. So our mind plays a lot of tricks on us, right? But if what you're saying was true, there are a lot of people out there that are paid money to go figure these things out, and they use methods that has been very effective in figuring these things out. So, for example, if such a thing exists, I would assume like they would have seen it by now. If people have that ability, there are a lot of people that would be very interested in proving that is true. And we would have had scientific studies that showed like, oh yeah, we had like people in a controlled environment under observation, and we give them these tests, and we completely isolated every other explanation that could be, and then they will actually see that there's something happening here. But it seems pretty obvious to me that there's something else that is happening here, or you're imagining something. Like, that is a more likely explanation than you noticing something that all the scientists in the world from all these countries have not been able to demonstrate that is reality. Like, which one is more likely? You are imagining something that you think is true, but it's not, or you have figured out something that all the scientists in the world have missed. Which one do you think is more likely?
That's precisely why I called you. I think it's fantastically unlikely that I personally, Judy, would have thought something up that's like Copernicus or Einstein. I think that is so unlikely as to be impossible, that there is not just a non-zero chance, there's no chance. And yet it happens, and it happens to me when for example, I'll see somebody will say, so-and-so they've diagnosed colon cancer, and I will see something in their body that's not the colon, and I think, well, he's got colon cancer, that's clear. And I'll see a good colon, and I'll see a black spot somewhere else, and not be able to reconcile that. And then it will turn out that they did not have colon cancer, but in fact had some appendicitis or something.
Ever made
that again and again. And so I just don't understand it, but I agree with you that it is unlikely to the point of being impossible. I just wondered how it might work.
Well, you may not get the answer to that, but to Armin's point, either you have supernatural abilities, or you are picking up innuendos, or you're picking up some hints from people or something, or you're just lucky guessing. You may have heard of this challenge that the famous atheist and magician James Randi had for years.
Yes.
The $1 Million Challenge, where he had it out there for years. Anybody who claims to be a mind reader or spoon bender or anyone with any supernatural claim, he would pay them $1 million if they could prove that was legitimate, and no one ever collected that $1 million. So
I've heard about his claim probably just about 5 years ago. And
so that's the point. It's more probable that you're just picking up some hints from people, some innuendos, some patterns, some lucky guesses, some whatever, because either that or you have supernatural abilities. It's either one or the other.
Well, I would not. I just feel that it couldn't be supernatural. It would be natural. It would simply be, like I was suggesting, something along the lines of people do have some degree of, what would you call it, where they extrude thought, not extrude, but,
that's possible. You can transmit
and we can pick it up. But I can't imagine it's I don't think it's supernatural. That doesn't make sense to me at all.
Right.
Anyway,
Judy, I think
to thank you.
I think the best solution to the situations like this is not to have an answer, right? I think getting comfortable with I don't know is sometimes the best solution here. Like we were like, oh, what is like our mind feels very uneasy when we can't explain something, but we can train our minds to be okay with not knowing. Sometimes the answer is like, I don't know what's happening here, and that is the best answer.
And it sounds like you're kind of there, Judy. You're kind of going like, I don't know what this is. It could be this. You're not making a claim that you think you know what it is. Yeah.
when I hear Neil deGrasse Tyson and Brian Greene and some of these other people that are geniuses say all the time, we don't know. And they're not a bit ashamed to say it. I'm very comfortable. There's so much that I don't know that I have to get comfortable with that or I'd go crazy. But before I let you go, or you let me go, I wanted to thank you, Armin, for something you said that means a great deal to me because I haven't heard anyone else say it. You called concubines in the Bible sex slaves, and that is just what they were.
Yeah,
and
I know.
I think when we talk about slavery, we talk about, it's generally, I don't know, discussed in a term that makes me think we're thinking of men generally as slaves, which would make sense because if you were buying a slave, you'd want a powerful person. But if you had a woman who was a slave, she not only would work around the house, and she was subject to the wife also. The wife could smack and beat that woman as much as she wanted. That woman was a slave with the addition that she had to have sex whenever the guy wanted her to. And that's a sex slave. And the Bible says nothing about concubines. I don't even know if there's any penalty for the man smacking them around, and they die within 3 days. You know, at least the slaves, you couldn't. Which, by the way, seems worse to me. They didn't die in 3 days. That means you did something like break their leg or something, and they didn't die, but they're suffering. And then after 3 days, you send them back to work because you can. That's just, the whole thing is just horrifying to me. But the women, to me, are not mentioned enough. Slaves.
It's a horrible book and a horrible
men,
religion.
The men would be sex slaves, too, in that situation if the man, you know, why wouldn't they have had gay people there? Mm-hmm. And if you had a slave, that was, you know, I know in Roman times and in Greek times, they could screw their slaves. And that was not considered a bad thing. Anyway, thank you guys so much for the work.
Listen, I know you, Judy, I know you had to sit on hold for a long time. I know you were on hold for a long time. Thank you for hanging in there, and thank you for calling.
Yes, thank you, Judy.
Thank you guys for the work